Hey peeps! Are you wanting to take the first step into Savage content but you aren't sure what you need to do to prepare? Well, I got you covered with 5 things that I think will have you ready to hop straight in. Stay tuned. Now, before I get into today's video, I must stress that in order to unlock Savage content, you need to be of level and have cleared that raid's normal mode to be eligible to unlock the Savage version, which is the same process as unlocking extremes. Now with that out of the way, let's actually hop right in. First things first, food. I'm sure while leveling classes and going through the story, you've used food to increase your experience gains. In Savage, however, using food, and more specifically the right food, can have a decent impact on your damage output, your healing output, or tenacity depending on what class or role you're playing and what stat you're prioritizing. If you're a DPS and wanting more damage, a lot of times you're wanting food with a combination of direct hit, determination, skill speed, spell speed, or critical hit depending on your class and its stat priority. For healers, if you're wanting more healing, then you're wanting food that will boost your piety. For tanks, if you want to be tankier, then you're wanting food that will boost your tenacity. It all depends on your class, your role, and build, which I will go a bit deeper into later in the video. TLDR, food is very important and can sometimes be the difference maker between your team wiping or your team clearing a fight. Next on our list is materia. For those who don't know, materia are the different colored stones you sometimes get when doing dungeons and quests that give different stats. Materia is actually quite handy as it will boost your stats by a great deal when all your gear is fully melted. So the question would be, how do you get materia? Well, as I stated earlier, you can get materia as a quest reward, and they drop in high level dungeons depending on the expansion. For example, at the time of making this video, Dawn Trail has just released. So materia 11 and 12 will be dropping out of level 100 dungeons. Other ways to get materia is by doing leveling and alliance roulettes once a day, which will give you cracked clusters, which can then be turned into a materia vendor for the materia of your choice. Now this next method of getting materia is one that will naturally happen as you play the game, and that is through Spirit Bond. Spirit Bond is something that builds on your armor as you do content naturally in that piece of armor up to 100%. Once your Spirit Bond on a piece of gear hits 100%, you can then extract that materia from it, setting your Spirit Bond back to 0%. The material you get will be random, but you'll naturally build your Spirit Bond up by simply doing content, so it's always worth utilizing. Now finally, the last method I have for getting materia is one that's actually quite popular, and it's by farming clusters via killing elite marks. What are elite marks? They are strong monsters that wander in each map identified by a certain mark next to their name. There are B ranks, A ranks, and S ranks. We'll be focusing specifically on A and S ranks since when they're killed, they drop clusters. These only spawn under certain conditions and can take a lot of people to bring down, so I advise you farm these with a large group. There are Discord servers and link shells where people relay marks in organized hunts, so I recommend looking up and joining one of those. But in my opinion, that is the best way to farm materia. So far, we've talked about food and materia boosting your overall output and how they shouldn't be ignored. But I didn't talk about the thing that gives us the most stats of all, that being our gear. Gear is very important because the higher eye level our gear is, the higher stats it gives, meaning we want to have the highest gear we can get when entering Savage, so that we can have a higher output, which is very important as some Savage fights have high DPS checks or high healing checks. So, how can we best prepare ourselves at the start of a Savage tier? Well, if it is the first Savage tier, like in the time of making this video, then you'll want to farm tomestones from high level dungeons so that you can get yourselves the best gear you can with tomes. If raids are available, I recommend doing those as well, as the gear you get from there will be around 10 eye level higher than the tome gear. Next, you'll want to do the 2 extreme trials that are available to you so that you can get yourselves a higher eye level weapon and accessory that may have more favorable stats for your job. Finally, if you're loaded with gil, you can always craft or buy yourself a crafted set of gear that comes out on raid day and pentamelt it. Gearing obviously changes if it isn't the start of a raid tier, as you'll have more options like better tome gear or alliance raid gear, which can work as well. Now, I do recommend trying to get gear that best suits your stat priority. For example, Reapers prioritize critical hit and direct hit, but this isn't 100% needed, it just allows you to be a bit stronger when raiding. Okay, so number 2 may be a bit strange to include, but this is something I feel is pretty important, and that is mindset. I mentioned mindset because everything I talked about beforehand means nothing if you quit the tier day 1. Savage is quite a step up from extremes and can have a steep learning curve if it's your first time doing content of that nature. At times, it can feel like you're holding the party back or not performing at your best. All of that is a-okay as long as you continue to learn and improve. After all, at some point everyone was in the same spot as you doing harder content for the first time. So don't give up and keep a positive mindset. At the same time, if you're doing well and someone keeps messing up mechanics, you need to have a little patience as eventually that person will get that mechanic. Everyone just learns at different paces, and taking out your frustrations on that person won't help them. Actually, it may make things a lot worse, so just remember that while you're out there raiding. Stay motivated and stay humble, peeps. Before I continue on to the thing that I think is the most important in preparing for Savage, I want to stop and dispel something that I commonly hear when I ask peeps why they haven't tried Savage or Ultimate content. Peeps, you do not need a static to enjoy harder content. Anything is achievable in Party Finder. I'd even argue that having a static doesn't make clearing any easier, and I'm speaking from multiple years of experience. So if you don't have a static, that is fine. You can still clear in Party Finder, and hey, while you're in Party Finder, you may even be invited to join someone else's static, so do not let that be a deterrent for you. Now we move on to what I think is the most important thing you should have to prepare for Savage, and that's class knowledge. Having an understanding of what each and every ability does in your class is vital. That includes role actions like Feint, Arm's Length, Surecast, etc. Having that understanding will help you to adjust in many situations. For example, if you're playing Reaper and there's a room-wide AoE that your team is struggling with, you can always help by using Feint, which will reduce the damage of the target by 5 to 10% depending on damage type, and you can use Arcane Crest, which will make you take 10% less damage and give your team regen for 15 seconds, which isn't much, but it still helps. Next, play the class you're the most comfortable on so that you can focus less on the mechanics of your class and focus more on learning the mechanics of the fight you're doing. If you aren't comfortable on a class, then practice and practice until you can perform on said class without even having to think much about it. And if you want to take it a step further, you can even do some research into your class and find the most optimal ways to play and squeeze the absolute most out of your class, which overall helps your team a lot, as when you're a DPS, you'll be putting out way more damage. If you're a healer, you'll have a much better time maintaining the party's overall health, and if you're a tank, you'll be able to utilize cooldowns whilst additionally putting out more damage. Now, I did almost forget to mention, but in knowing your class, you also want to know what stats to prioritize in your gear. For example, I use Reaper because I main Reaper. Our stat priority goes critical hit, and then direct hit and determination, while another class like Monk, you'll want to prioritize skill speed up to a certain point, then go into crit and determination, direct hit. So knowing what stats to prioritize as you gear up will allow you to utilize your class to the fullest. Alright peeps, that's all for me today, but if you enjoyed or found this content useful, please let me know by leaving a like and commenting something you may have learned from this video, or anything you think I may have missed in the guide. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe for more content. Anyway, I hope everyone has a great day. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.